They're calling it England's Amityville.
What was that?
An oppressing spirit will try to force you to commit the...
Sensing a presence?
I'm not sensing anything.
What is happening?
I had a premonition of your death.
You are going to die.
This is my Alan.
What if the most terrifying haunting wasn't just a ghost, a broken bar, but something far darker? In 2016, The Conjuring 2 took us from the chilling Amityville case straight into one of the most documented hauntings in history at the Enfield Poltergeist, with Ed and Lorraine Warren facing their most dangerous encounter yet. This story isn't just about spirits or broken bar, it's about survival against pure evil. Welcome to M Cinema Reviews. Today, we dive deep into The Conjuring 2. The Conjuring 2, released in the United Kingdom as The Conjuring 2, The Enfield Case, is a 2016 American supernatural horror film directed by James Wan. The screenplay was written by Chad Hayes, Carrie W. Hayes, Wan, and David Leslie Johnson. Serving as a follow-up to The Conjuring, 2013, it is the second entry in the series and the third installment within the Conjuring universe. Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga return as paranormal investigators and authors Ed and Lorraine Warren. This time, the story follows the Warrens traveling to England in 1977 to help the Hodgson family, who are plagued by terrifying poltergeist activity at their Enfield council house, an event that came to be known as the Enfield Poltergeist case. Plans for a sequel were underway as early as July 2013, before the release of the first film, with Wilson and Farmiga already signed to reprise their roles. In October 2014, it was confirmed that Wan would return as director, while also contributing to the screenplay for the first time in the series. Filming began in Los Angeles in September 2015 and later moved to London, concluding in December of the same year. The film premiered at TCL Chinese Theatre on June 7, 2016, before its U.S. theatrical release on June 10. Distributed by Warner Brothers Pictures and New Line Cinema. It was met with mostly positive reviews from critics and became a major box office success. earning more than $320 million worldwide. The film later inspired a spin-off prequel, The Nun, released in 2018, and was followed by a direct sequel, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, in 2021. In 1976, paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren looked into the infamous Amityville murders, seeking to uncover whether a demonic force influenced Ronald DeFeo Jr. to kill his family in 1974, as well as the later haunting reported by the Lutz family. During As A Tilde copyright Ants in the House, Lorraine experiences a disturbing vision of a demonic nun and foresees Ed being fatally impaled. A year later, the Hodgson family in Enfield, London, begins experiencing frightening events after Janet, the second oldest child, uses a Ouija board. She begins sleepwalking and claims to speak with the spirit of an elderly man, Bill Wilkins, who once lived and died in the house. Janet is soon possessed by Wilkins during a televised interview, drawing media attention. The Warrens are called in to determine whether the haunting is genuine or a fabrication. Haunted by her vision of Ed's death, Lorraine again encounters the sinister nun in a trance, during which she unknowingly writes its name in her Bible. While investigating, the Warrens consult fellow researchers Maurice Cross and Anita Gregory. Gregory presents evidence suggesting Janet faked the activity for attention, casting doubt on the case. Disheartened, Ed and Lorraine prepare to leave but then realize Wilkins is only a pawn. The true antagonist is the demonic nun, using him to break Janet's spirit while masking its presence from Lorraine. The Warrens rush back to find Janet under the demon's control, about to leap from a window. Ed saves her but nearly falls himself when lightning strikes a nearby tree, forming the jagged stump Lorraine saw in her vision. Remembering the name she had written down in Valak, Lorraine speaks it aloud, overpowering the demon and sending it back to hell. Janet is released from possession, and Ed narrowly avoids the death Lorraine had foreseen. Back at home, the Warrens add a new object to their collection of cursed items, a zoetrope toy belonging to Peggy Hodgson's youngest child, known as the Crooked Man. It joins their growing room of artifacts alongside April Perrin's music box and the Annabelle doll. The Conjuring 2, 2016. A comprehensive analysis of casting choices and their impact on horror cinema. Introduction. The horror genre has always been a delicate balance between supernatural terror and human emotion, requiring actors who can navigate the thin line between believability and otherworldly fear. James Wan's The Conjuring 2, released in 2016, stands as a masterclass in horror filmmaking, largely due to its exceptional casting choices that brought together seasoned veterans and promising newcomers to create one of the most effective supernatural horror films of the decade. The casting process for the sequel to the 2013 hit The Conjuring was a meticulous endeavor that required finding actors capable of embodying both the grounded reality of family drama and the ethereal terror of paranormal encounters. This comprehensive analysis explores every facet of The Conjuring 2's casting decisions, from the return of beloved leads to the discovery of fresh talent, examining how each choice contributed to the film's critical and commercial success. The movie, which grossed over $320 million worldwide against a $40 million budget, proved that thoughtful casting could elevate a horror sequel beyond mere jump scares to create a genuinely terrifying and emotionally resonant experience. The Foundation. Returning to the Warren universe. Patrick Wilson as Ed Warren. The decision to bring back Patrick Wilson as Ed Warren was perhaps the easiest casting choice for The Conjuring 2. Wilson's portrayal of the paranormal investigator in the first film had established him as the perfect embodiment of Ed Warren's combination of unwavering faith, intellectual curiosity, and protective instincts. His return to the role represented continuity that audiences craved while allowing for character development that would deepen his portrayal. Wilson, known for his work in Watchmen, Insidious, and various Broadway productions, brought a unique blend of everyman relatability and subtle intensity to the role. His casting was crucial because Ed Warren needed to be simultaneously believable as a devoted husband, a serious paranormal researcher, and a man capable of facing supernatural entities without losing his humanity. Wilson's natural warmth and sincerity made audiences believe in Ed's unwavering devotion to both his wife and their dangerous calling. The actor's preparation for returning to the role involved extensive research into the real Ed Warren's life and methods. Wilson spent time understanding Warren's Catholic faith, his approach to paranormal investigation, and most importantly, his relationship with his wife Lorraine. This dedication to authenticity showed in his performance, where every gesture and line delivery felt grounded in a real person's experience rather than a fictional character's actions. Vera Farmiga as Lorraine Warren. Vera Farmiga's return as Lorraine Warren was equally essential to the film's success. Farmiga had received widespread acclaim for her portrayal of the clairvoyant investigator in the first film, earning particular praise for her ability to convey the emotional and physical toll of psychic abilities while maintaining Lorraine's strength and compassion. Her casting in the sequel allowed for exploration of Lorraine's growing powers and the increasing danger they pose to her well-being. Farmiga, an Academy Award-nominated actress known for her work in Up in the Air and Bates Motel, brought both vulnerability and strength to Lorraine Warren. Her ability to portray the character's psychic visions with genuine terror while never losing sight of Lorraine's maternal instincts and spiritual faith was crucial to the film's emotional core. The actress's research included meetings with the real Lorraine Warren, allowing her to capture not just the character's supernatural abilities but her human qualities as well. The chemistry between Wilson and Farmiga was a cornerstone of both Conjuring films. Their portrayal of the Warren marriage, showing a couple united by love, faith, and shared purpose, provided the emotional anchor that kept audiences invested even during the most terrifying supernatural encounters. This relationship dynamic was so effective that it became a template for other horror films seeking to ground supernatural terror in human emotion. The heart of horror, the Hodgson family. Frances O'Connor as Peggy Hodgson. The casting of Frances O'Connor as Peggy Hodgson, the mother of the family experiencing the Enfield Poltergeist, was a crucial decision that required finding an actress capable of portraying both the maternal strength and overwhelming fear. O'Connor, an Australian actress known for her work in Mansfield Park, AI, artificial intelligence, and the importance of being earnest, brought the necessary gravitas and emotional range to a role that demanded both vulnerability and fierce protectiveness. Peggy Hodgson's character required an actress who could believably portray a single mother struggling to protect her children from supernatural forces while dealing with skepticism from authorities and the community. O'Connor's performance captured Peggy's desperation and determination, showing a woman pushed to her limits but refusing to abandon her children. Her portrayal needed to convince audiences that this was a real person in an impossible situation, not merely a horror movie victim waiting to be terrorized. The casting process for Peggy Hodgson likely involved considering numerous actresses capable of carrying the emotional weight of the role. O'Connor's selection demonstrated the filmmaker's commitment to finding performers who could handle both dramatic scenes and horror sequences with equal skill. Her ability to interact convincingly with child actors while maintaining the intensity required for supernatural encounters made her an ideal choice for this pivotal role. Madison Wolfe as Janet Hodgson. Perhaps the most crucial casting decision for The Conjuring 2 was finding the right actress to portray Janet Hodgson, the young girl at the center of the Enfield Poltergeist case. Madison Wolfe, a relative newcomer at the time, was selected for this demanding role that required her to portray possession, speak in different voices, and carry much of the film's most intense supernatural sequences. Wolfe's casting represented a significant risk-and-reward scenario. The role demanded not just acting ability but also the emotional maturity to handle disturbing content and the physical demands of portraying possession. Her performance needed to be convincing enough to sell the reality of the supernatural events while maintaining the audience's sympathy for Janet as a victim rather than a villain. The young actress's preparation for the role involved working closely with dialect coaches to master the voice of Bill, the elderly spirit supposedly speaking through her. Wolfe also had to study the real Janet Hodgson's experiences and testimonies to bring authenticity to her portrayal. Her ability to switch between Janet's natural personality and a possessed state became one of the film's most memorable and chilling elements. The casting of a relatively unknown actress like Wolf also served the film's needs by avoiding the distraction that might come from casting a recognizable young star. This allowed audiences to see Janet as a real person rather than a performer, enhancing the film's documentary-like authenticity in depicting the Enfield case. Supporting Hodgson family members. The casting of the remaining Hodgson children was equally important to creating a believable family dynamic. Lauren Esposito as Margaret Hodgson, Patrick McCauley as Johnny Hodgson, and Benjamin Hay as Billy Hodgson were all carefully selected to create authentic sibling relationships and family chemistry with O'Connor and Wolf. These young actors needed to portray children dealing with supernatural terror while maintaining the realistic dynamics of siblings in crisis. Their performances required them to show fear, confusion, and the way children adapt to extraordinary circumstances. The casting director's attention to finding young performers who could work well together as a family unit was crucial to the film's emotional authenticity. The supporting ensemble, building atmosphere and authenticity. Simon McBurney as Maurice Gross. Simon McBurney's casting as Maurice Gross, the paranormal investigator who first documented the Enfield Poltergeist, brought gravitas and authenticity to the role. McBurney, known for his work with the theater company Complicit 8 copyright and roles in The Theory of Everything and Mission Impossible: A Rogue Nation, brought the perfect combination of intellectual curiosity and growing concern that the role demanded. Gross's character served as a bridge between the skeptical world of scientific investigation and the supernatural reality the families were experiencing. McBurney's portrayal needed to show a man whose rational worldview was being challenged by increasingly inexplicable events. His casting provided the film with a character who could voice the audience's skepticism while ultimately accepting the reality of the supernatural encounters. Maria Doyle Kennedy as Peggy Nottingham. Maria Doyle Kennedy's casting as Peggy Nottingham, a neighbor who witnesses some of the supernatural events, represented the filmmakers' attention to detail in populating their world with authentic characters. Kennedy, an Irish actress and singer known for her work in The Tudors and Orphan Black, brought warmth and credibility to a role that could have easily been thankless. The neighbor characters in horror films often serve merely as witnesses or victims, but Kennedy's casting and performance elevated the role to show how supernatural events affect an entire community. Her portrayal contributed to the film's sense of place and community, making the Enfield setting feel like a real neighborhood rather than just a horror movie location. Franca Potenti as Anita Gregory. The casting of Franca Potenti as Anita Gregory, a skeptical paranormal investigator, brought international credibility and dramatic tension to the film. Potenti, known for her work in Run Lola Run and The Bourne Identity, represented the rational, scientific approach to paranormal investigation that contrasted with the Warrens' more faith-based methods. Gregory's character served as an antagonist not through evil intent but through her rigid skepticism that threatened to discredit the family's experiences. Potenti's casting provided the role with the necessary intellectual weight to make her skepticism feel legitimate rather than simply obstructive. Her performance showed how scientific rationalism could become its own form of blindness when faced with phenomena that defied conventional explanation. Simon Delaney as Vic Nottingham. Simon Delaney's portrayal of Vic Nottingham, another neighbor character, demonstrated the casting team's commitment to authenticity in even minor roles. Delaney, an Irish actor known for his comedy work, brought a naturalistic approach to the role that helped ground the film in reality even as supernatural events escalated around the characters. The Nottingham family's presence in the film served multiple purposes. They provided witnesses to the supernatural events, showed how the community reacted to the Hodgson family's claims, and represented the normal world that the supernatural was intruding upon. Delaney's casting helped make these neighbors feel like real people rather than mere plot devices. The supernatural element, bringing evil to life. Bonnie Aarons as the nun, Lavik. While Bonnie Aarons' role as the demonic nun Lavik was relatively small in screen time, her casting proved to be one of the most significant decisions for the film's lasting impact. Aarons, a character actress known for her distinctive appearance and ability to embody unsettling characters, brought a physical presence to Lavik that made the demon genuinely terrifying. The nun character required an actress who could be frightening through presence rather than just makeup and special effects. Erin's natural features, combined with her understanding of how to move and gesture in ways that suggested overworldly malevolence, created one of modern horror's most memorable antagonists. Her portrayal was so effective that it launched an entire spin-off franchise, beginning with The Nun in 2018. Erin's background and character work and her ability to transform herself physically for roles made her the perfect choice for bringing Valak to life. Her casting showed the importance of finding performers who could work effectively within heavy makeup and prosthetics while still conveying the character's evil nature through subtle physical choices. Bob Adrian as the Crooked Man. The casting of Bob Adrian as the Crooked Man represented another crucial decision in bringing the film's supernatural antagonists to life. Adrian's role required him to contort his body into unnatural positions while maintaining the character's threatening presence. His background and physical performance and his ability to move in ways that suggested supernatural flexibility made him ideal for this demanding role. The Crooked Man sequence became one of the film's most memorable set pieces, requiring an actor who could be both visually disturbing and genuinely threatening. Adrian's casting and performance showed how important physical casting could be in horror films, where an actor's movement and presence often mattered more than traditional acting skills. The casting director's vision. Anne McCarthy's approach. Anne McCarthy served as the primary casting director for The Conjuring 2, and her approach to assembling the cast reflected a deep understanding of horror filmmaking's unique requirements. McCarthy's work involved finding actors who could handle both dramatic and supernatural elements while maintaining the authentic, documentary-like feel that James Wan wanted for the film. McCarthy's casting philosophy appeared to prioritize authenticity over star power, seeking performers who could disappear into their roles rather than dominate scenes with their celebrity presence. This approach served the film well, allowing audiences to focus on the story and characters rather than being distracted by recognizable faces and inappropriate roles. The casting director's attention to chemistry between performers was evident in every family relationship and professional partnership depicted in the film. From the Warrens' marriage to the Hodgson family dynamics to the professional relationships between various investigators, every interaction felt genuine and lived in. International casting considerations. The Conjuring 2 required extensive casting in both American and British markets, necessitating a casting approach that could find authentic performers for both locations. McCarthy worked with associate casting directors to ensure that British characters were portrayed by actors who could bring genuine authenticity to their roles. This international approach to casting helped the film avoid the common Hollywood trap of using American actors attempting British accents or British actors who couldn't convincingly portray their characters' specific regional backgrounds. The attention to authentic casting contributed significantly to the film's believable portrayal of 1970s England and the specific community where the Enfield Poltergeist case occurred. Character development through casting. Age-appropriate casting. One of the most important aspects of The Conjuring 2 casting was ensuring that all performers were age-appropriate for their roles and capable of handling the film's mature content. The extensive use of child actors required careful consideration of both their acting abilities and their emotional readiness to participate in a horror film. The casting team's approach to working with young performers involved extensive preparation and support systems to ensure that the children could deliver convincing performances without being traumatized by the content. This careful approach to casting and managing young talent contributed to performances that felt natural and unforced. Physical casting requirements. Horror films often place unique physical demands on actors, and The Conjuring 2 was no exception. From Madison Wolfe's possession sequences to the various actors portraying supernatural entities, casting had to consider performers' physical abilities and willingness to undergo the demanding requirements of horror filmmaking. The film's practical effects approach meant that actors needed to be comfortable with elaborate makeup, prosthetics, and physical manipulation that would create the supernatural elements. This physical casting consideration affected everything from the selection of stunt performers to the choice of actors who would interact with practical effects. Cultural authenticity and representation. British working class authenticity. The Enfield Poltergeist case took place in a specific socio-economic context that the film needed to portray authentically. The casting of the Hodgson family and their community required finding performers who could convincingly portray working-class British families of the 1970s without resorting to caricature or stereotype. Frances O'Connor's casting as Peggy Hodgson was particularly important in this regard, as her character needed to embody the struggles of a single mother in 1970s England while avoiding patronizing or inauthentic portrayals. The supporting cast's ability to create a believable community around the family contributed significantly to the film's social authenticity. American paranormal investigators. The contrast between the American Warrens and the British families they were trying to help required casting that could highlight cultural differences without making either group seem foreign or incomprehensible to audiences. Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga's established chemistry as the Warrens provided a stable foundation for exploring how their American approach to paranormal investigation would translate to a British context. The casting decisions around the Warrens' interactions with British authorities and investigators required actors who could show the subtle cultural negotiations and misunderstandings that would naturally occur in such cross-cultural professional relationships. Genre expectations in casting. Horror casting traditions. The Conjuring 2 operated within established horror film traditions while also attempting to elevate the genre through superior casting choices. Traditional horror casting often prioritizes physical appearance and scream quality over dramatic acting ability, but this film's approach suggested a more sophisticated understanding of what makes horror effective. The decision to cast established dramatic actors like Patrick Wilson, Vera Farmiga, and Frances O'Connor in leading roles demonstrated confidence that horror audiences would respond to genuine dramatic performances rather than typical genre casting. This approach helped establish the film as prestige horror that could attract both genre fans and mainstream audiences. Breaking casting stereotypes. Many of the casting choices in The Conjuring 2 deliberately avoided common horror film stereotypes. Rather than casting obvious victims or over-the-top villains, the film's casting sought to find performers who could make even supernatural situations feel grounded in recognizable human experience. The avoidance of stereotypical casting extended to the film's approach to authority figures, family dynamics, and community relationships. By casting against type in many roles, the film created a more realistic world that made its supernatural elements more frightening through contrast with ordinary human concerns. Technical considerations and casting. Voice work and dialogue coaching. The film's international cast required extensive dialogue coaching to ensure consistency and authenticity. Madison Wolfe's work with dialect coaches to master the voice of Bill represented just one example of the technical preparation that went into the film's casting choices. The decision to have characters speak in authentic regional accents rather than generic British or American voices required casting actors who could either naturally speak in the required dialects or demonstrate the ability to master them convincingly. This attention to vocal authenticity contributed to the film's documentary-like credibility. Working with special effects. Modern horror films require actors to work extensively with special effects, both practical and digital. The casting process needed to identify performers who could work effectively with green screens, practical effects, and other technical elements while maintaining convincing emotional performances. The supernatural sequences required actors who could react convincingly to effects that would be added in post-production, demanding strong imaginations and the ability to maintain performance quality under technically challenging conditions. This consideration affected casting decisions throughout the production. Critical reception and casting validation. Performance recognition. The critical reception of The Conjuring 2 consistently praised the cast's performances, particularly highlighting the work of Patrick Wilson, Vera Farmiga, Madison Wolfe, and Frances O'Connor. Critics noted how the strong casting elevated what could have been a routine horror sequel into a genuinely effective supernatural thriller. The recognition that the cast received validated the filmmakers' approach to prioritizing dramatic acting ability and authentic character development over traditional horror casting considerations. This critical validation helped establish a new standard for horror film casting that influenced subsequent genre productions. Audience response. Audience reactions to The Conjuring 2 consistently mentioned the strong performances as a key element in the film's effectiveness. The believable family relationships and genuine emotional connections between characters helped audiences invest in the supernatural storyline and enhanced the film's scare tactics. The positive audience response to the casting choices, particularly the child performances and the continued chemistry between Wilson and Farmiga, demonstrated that horror audiences appreciated sophisticated character development and authentic dramatic performances within the genre framework. Legacy and influence. Impact on horror casting. The Conjuring 2's success influenced subsequent horror film casting approaches, encouraging filmmakers to prioritize dramatic acting ability and authentic character development over traditional genre considerations. The film demonstrated that audiences would respond positively to elevated casting in horror contexts. The success of relative newcomer Madison Wolfe in such a demanding role showed that careful casting and preparation could allow young actors to deliver powerful performances in challenging material. This success encouraged other horror productions to take chances on less established performers when they demonstrated the necessary skills and commitment. Franchise development. The casting choices in The Conjuring 2 laid the foundation for the continued expansion of the Conjuring universe, with several cast members returning for subsequent films and spin-offs. The strength of the performances helped establish these characters as worthy of continued exploration rather than one-off appearances. Bonnie Aaron's portrayal of Villock proved so effective that it launched the Nun spin-off series, demonstrating how strong casting choices could create new franchise opportunities. The success of these expanded universe films validated the original casting decisions and showed their long-term commercial value. Industry recognition. The film industry took notice of the Conjuring 2 casting approach, with many subsequent horror productions attempting to replicate its balance of established talent and carefully chosen newcomers. Casting directors began to see the film as a model for how to approach horror casting with dramatic sophistication. The success of the film's casting approach influenced not just horror productions but also other genre films seeking to balance entertainment value with dramatic credibility. The film's example showed how thoughtful casting could elevate any genre production. Behind-the-scenes casting stories. Audition processes. The audition process for The Conjuring 2 involved extensive testing of actors' abilities to handle both dramatic and supernatural material. Potential cast members were required to demonstrate their comfort with horror content while also showing their capacity for genuine emotional performance. Madison Wolfe's audition process reportedly involved testing her ability to speak in different voices and portray possession states convincingly. The casting team needed to ensure that she could handle these demanding sequences while maintaining the character's essential humanity and audience sympathy. Chemistry testing. The casting process placed significant emphasis on testing chemistry between potential cast members, particularly within the family units and professional partnerships depicted in the film. The success of these relationships was crucial to the film's emotional effectiveness and supernatural credibility. The continuation of Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga's partnership from the first film provided a foundation for the sequel, but new cast members needed to demonstrate their ability to work effectively within this established dynamic while bringing their own authentic relationships to the screen. Director's vision. James Wan's vision for The Conjuring 2 influenced every casting decision, with the director seeking performers who could balance the film's supernatural elements with grounded human emotion. His experience with horror films informed his understanding of what types of performances would be most effective in creating genuine scares. Wan's collaborative approach to casting involved working closely with the casting director to ensure that every role, no matter how small, contributed to the film's overall authenticity and emotional impact. This attention to detail in casting reflected his broader commitment to crafting a superior horror experience. Conclusion. The casting of The Conjuring 2 represents a masterclass in horror film casting that elevated the genre through thoughtful character development, authentic performances, and careful attention to dramatic credibility. From the return of beloved leads Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga to the discovery of breakthrough talent like Madison Wolfe, every casting decision contributed to creating one of the most effective supernatural horror films of the 2010s. The film's success demonstrated that horror audiences would respond positively to elevated casting approaches that prioritize dramatic acting ability and authentic character relationships over traditional genre considerations. This approach influenced not only subsequent films in the Conjuring universe but also broader trends in horror film casting that continue to shape the genre today. The careful balance between established talent and promising newcomers, combined with meticulous attention to cultural authenticity and character development, created a template for horror casting that other filmmakers have attempted to replicate. The enduring popularity of the film and its characters validates the casting approach and demonstrates the lasting value of treating horror as a dramatic genre worthy of serious performance consideration. Through its casting choices, The Conjuring 2 proved that horror films could achieve both commercial success and critical respectability by treating their characters as real people worthy of audience investment rather than mere victims waiting to be terrorized. This legacy continues to influence horror filmmaking and stands as a testament to the power of thoughtful casting in creating genuinely effective supernatural cinema. The film's casting achievements extend beyond individual performances to encompass the creation of believable relationships, authentic communities, and compelling character arcs that enhanced every supernatural encounter. By grounding its horror in recognizable human experience through superior casting choices, The Conjuring 2 achieved the rare distinction of being both genuinely frightening and emotionally satisfying, setting a standard that continues to influence horror cinema today. The Conjuring 2, 2016, a comprehensive analysis of horror cinema's supernatural sequel introduction. The Conjuring 2, released in 2016, stands as one of the most successful horror sequels in modern cinema history. Directed by James Wan and serving as the sequel to 2013's critically acclaimed The Conjuring, this supernatural horror film expanded the Warren universe while delivering spine-chilling thrills that captivated audiences worldwide. Known in the United Kingdom as The Conjuring 2, The Enfield Case, the film skillfully blended real-world paranormal investigations with cinematic horror craftsmanship, creating an experience that both honored its predecessor and carved its own terrifying path. The film brought back Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga as paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, this time following their journey to England to assist the Hodgson family, who were experiencing intense poltergeist activity in their Enfield council house. Based on the real-life Enfield Poltergeist case from 1977, The Conjuring 2 merged documented paranormal events with Hollywood storytelling to create a chilling narrative that resonated with both horror enthusiasts and mainstream audiences. Production development and pre-production. The development of The Conjuring 2 began remarkably early in the franchise's life cycle. In July 2013, even before the original film's theatrical release, Variety reported that New Line Cinema was already deep into the early stages of developing a sequel. This unprecedented move demonstrated the studio's confidence in the project, driven by positive test screenings and early reviews of the first film. The initial screenplay development fell to Chad Hayes and Carrie W. Hayes, the writing duo who had crafted the original film script. Their early work established the foundation for what would become the Enfield Case adaptation. However, the script underwent several iterations and refinements throughout the development process. Final Destination 5 writer Eric Serer was brought in to doctor the Hayes brothers' script, focusing primarily on dialogue enhancement and character development. His contributions helped sharpen the conversational elements that would prove crucial to the film's character-driven horror approach. In January 2015, David Leslie Johnson joined the project for additional rewrites. Johnson's involvement proved significant, as his experience with horror and supernatural thriller writing helped refine the script's structure and pacing. The collaborative writing process ensured that the screenplay maintained the atmospheric dread and character authenticity that made the original film so compelling. The choice to focus on the Enfield Poltergeist case was both strategic and creatively inspired. The real-life case, which took place in the London borough of Enfield from 1977 to 1979, involved alleged haunting incidents affecting two sisters, aged 11 and 13, in their mother's council house. This case provided rich source material that had been documented extensively, offering the filmmakers a solid foundation of reported supernatural phenomena to draw from. The film also incorporated elements from the Warrens' investigation of the Amityville horror case, creating a broader canvas that showcased different aspects of the paranormal investigators' work. This dual-case approach allowed the filmmakers to explore various types of supernatural manifestations while maintaining narrative coherence. By July 2013, both Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson had signed on to reprise their roles as Lorraine and Ed Warren respectively. Their commitment to the project was confirmed in February 2014. Providing stability and continuity that proved essential to the sequel's success. The actors' dedication to understanding their real-life counterparts remained evident throughout the development process. In October 2014, James Wan officially committed to returning as director, marking a significant milestone in the project's development. Wan's decision to return was driven by his deep connection to the Warren characters and his desire to continue exploring their stories. Speaking about his choice to return, Wan stated his excitement about continuing the saga of Ed and Lorraine Warren, describing the opportunity to nurture my baby that I created as part of his motivation for directing the sequel. The pre-production phase intensified in early 2015. In July 2015, lead actors Farmiga and Wilson made a research trip to visit Lorraine Warren at the New England Paranormal Research Center in Connecticut. This visit was crucial for the actors' preparation, allowing them to spend time with their real-life counterpart and gain deeper insights into the Warren methodology and personality traits that would inform their performances. James Wan officially began pre-production on July 28, 2015. Marking the formal start of the intensive preparation phase. The production received a significant boost in August 2015 when the California Film Commission awarded the project $5.6 million in tax credits for bringing the production to the state. This financial incentive helped ensure that the majority of filming could take place in controlled studio environments. Filming principal photography for The Conjuring 2 commenced on September 21, 2015, in Los Angeles, California. The production timeline was carefully planned to maximize both creative opportunities and budget efficiency, with the majority of filming taking place on controlled sound stages. One of the most intriguing aspects of the production was the decision to bring in a priest from the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Santa Fe to bless the set. This unusual step was taken due to what producers described as an inexplicable series of events that had occurred during the production of the first film. The blessing ceremony highlighted the production team's respect for the supernatural subject matter and their desire to create a safe working environment for cast and crew. Don Burgess was confirmed as the film's director of photography on September 13, 2015. Burgess brought extensive experience in both horror and action cinematography to the project, helping to establish the visual language that would define the film's atmospheric approach to supernatural horror. The casting process continued throughout the early filming period. In September 2015, several key cast members joined the production. Frances O'Connor was cast as Peggy Hodgson, the mother of the affected family, bringing her dramatic experience to the emotionally demanding role. Simon McBurney joined as Morris Cross, the real-life paranormal investigator who worked on the Enfield case. Madison Wolfe secured the crucial role of Janet Hodgson, the young girl at the center of the supernatural manifestations. Additional cast members included Franco Potenti as skeptical investigator Anita Gregory, Simon Delaney as Vic Nottingham, and Maria Doyle Kennedy as Peggy Nottingham. Newcomers Patrick McCauley and Benjamin Hay were cast as Johnny and Billy Hodgson respectively, completing the core Hodgson family dynamic. The production faced the challenge of creating two distinct geographical settings, the familiar Warren home base and the unfamiliar English environment of the Enfield case. The majority of filming took place on sound stages at Warner Brothers Studios in Burbank, where elaborate sets were constructed to represent both American and British locations. Production moved to London on November 18, 2015, bringing authenticity to the English portions of the story. The London filming included location work in and around the Warrington, a pub in the residential district of Maida Vale, which helped establish the genuine British atmosphere that was crucial to the film's credibility. On November 22, filming took place at Marylebone Station, capturing the authentic London transportation infrastructure that would help ground the story in its real-world setting. The London filming phase lasted approximately 10 days, providing essential exterior shots and authentic British locations that enhanced the film's atmospheric authenticity. Meanwhile, the controlled studio environment allowed for the creation of the elaborate supernatural effects and carefully choreographed horror sequences that would define the film's most memorable moments. Principal photography concluded on December 1, 2015. After 50 days of filming, the production split was strategically planned, with 40 days of filming taking place on sound stages at Warner Brothers Studios, Burbank, and 10 days on location in London. This distribution allowed the filmmakers to maintain creative control over the most complex supernatural sequences while capturing authentic British atmosphere for the story's English setting. Post-production. The post-production phase of The Conjuring 2 proved to be both extensive and creatively crucial. One of the most significant developments during this phase was a major design change to the film's primary antagonist. Initially, the demonic entity was conceived as a demonic figure with wings, but James Wan felt this design didn't fit the grounded, atmospheric approach he was pursuing. In March 2016, additional photography began to completely reinvent the film's antagonist. Wan made the creative decision to transform the demon into a nun, believing this change would make the film more grounded and psychologically disturbing. Bonnie Aarons was cast in this pivotal role, bringing an unsettling physical presence that would become one of the film's most iconic elements. This decision proved prescient, as the demon nun character would later spawn its own successful spin-off film. The post-production process involved extensive collaboration between various departments to create the film's supernatural effects. The combination of practical effects, atmospheric lighting, and carefully controlled sound design created the layered horror experience that audiences would ultimately encounter. The decision to maintain a balance between practical and digital effects helped preserve the tactile, believable quality that had made the original film so effective. Color grading and final sound mixing were crucial elements in establishing the film's distinct atmospheric identity. The contrast between the warm, familiar Warren household scenes and the cold, foreboding atmosphere of the Enfield house required careful attention to visual and auditory details that would guide audience emotional responses throughout the narrative. Music. The musical score for The Conjuring 2 was composed by Joseph Bishara, who returned from the original film to continue developing the Warren universe's distinctive audio landscape. Bishara had previously established himself as James Wan's go-to composer, having created memorable scores for The Conjuring and the Insidious film series. His understanding of atmospheric horror composition made him the ideal choice to expand upon the musical themes established in the first film. Bishara's approach to The Conjuring 2's score emphasized building tension through subtle audio manipulation and carefully orchestrated crescendos that enhanced the film's supernatural elements without overwhelming the performances or atmospheric details. His composition style blended traditional orchestral arrangements with unsettling electronic elements, creating an audio landscape that felt both timeless and contemporary. The score was released on June 3, 2016, by Water Tower Music, allowing horror fans to experience Bishara's compositions outside the theatrical context. The soundtrack release demonstrated the importance of music in establishing the film's identity and provided additional revenue streams for the production. Beyond Bishara's original compositions, The Conjuring 2 featured several notable musical moments that enhanced character development and atmospheric authenticity. Patrick Wilson's performance of Elvis Presley's Can't Help Falling in Love on guitar provided a humanizing moment for the Ed Warren character while showcasing Wilson's musical abilities. This scene served multiple narrative purposes, demonstrating Ed's attempt to comfort the frightened Hodgson family while revealing his own vulnerability and humanity. The film also incorporated period-appropriate popular music that helped establish the 1977 setting. Songs such as The Clash's London Calling and the Bee Gees' I Started a Joke were strategically placed to enhance the British atmosphere and historical authenticity. These musical choices helped ground the supernatural narrative in recognizable cultural touchstones. Traditional nursery rhymes played a particularly important role in the film's horror approach. This old man and there was a crooked man were used to create unsettling contrasts between childhood innocence and supernatural menace. The manipulation of these familiar childhood songs into sources of dread demonstrated the filmmaker's sophisticated understanding of psychological horror techniques. Composer Mark Isham's family themes from the original film, specifically Photograph and Happy Family, were reprised in The Conjuring 2, providing musical continuity between the films while reinforcing the Warren family's central role in the expanding universe. This musical connection helped establish the emotional foundation that would carry audiences from the first film into the sequel's new challenges. Released theatrical. The release strategy for The Conjuring 2 underwent several adjustments during its development cycle, reflecting both industry scheduling considerations and the filmmaker's desire to optimize the final product. Initially, the film was scheduled for release on October 23, 2015, which would have provided a Halloween-adjacent release date ideal for horror content. However, in October 2014, Warner Brothers made the strategic decision to pull the film from its original release date and reschedule it for an unspecified 2016 release. This delay allowed additional time for post-production refinement and provided greater flexibility in the competitive theatrical marketplace. By November 2014, the release date was definitively set for June 10, 2016. Representing a significant shift from the traditional October horror release window to a summer blockbuster slot. The decision to release The Conjuring 2 in June demonstrated Warner Brothers' confidence in the film's commercial potential. Summer releases typically face greater competition from major studio tentpole films, but they also offer access to larger audiences and extended theatrical runs. This scheduling choice reflected the studio's belief that the film could compete with mainstream blockbuster entertainment while maintaining its horror identity. The Conjuring 2 had its red carpet world premiere at the TCL Chinese Theater on June 7, 2016. As part of the Los Angeles Film Festival's program. This prestigious venue and festival association helped establish the film's cultural significance while building anticipation for its wide release 3 days later. The premiere event attracted significant media attention and provided important promotional momentum for the theatrical launch. The film's theatrical release on June 10, 2016, was managed by Warner Brothers Pictures and New Line Cinema, leveraging both companies' distribution networks to maximize global reach. The release strategy emphasized both domestic and international markets, recognizing the universal appeal of the Warren characters and supernatural horror content. One unusual incident occurred during the film's theatrical run that highlighted its intense atmospheric effects. On June 17, 2016, a 65-year-old man died of a heart attack while watching the film at a cinema in Tiruvannamalai, India. While tragic, this incident inadvertently demonstrated the film's ability to generate genuine physiological responses in audiences, confirming its effectiveness as horror entertainment. Home media. The home media release strategy for The Conjuring 2 followed contemporary industry standards while providing additional value for horror enthusiasts and collectors. The film was first made available as a digital download on August 30, 2016, allowing early adopters and digital-first consumers to access the content in their preferred format. The physical media release followed shortly thereafter, with DVD and Blu-ray versions becoming available on September 13, 2016. The relatively short window between theatrical and home media release reflected industry trends toward faster home availability while still allowing adequate time for theatrical revenue generation. The home media release included an extensive collection of bonus features designed to appeal to horror fans and filmmaking enthusiasts. Behind-the-scenes footage provided insights into the production process, revealing the techniques used to create the film's supernatural effects and atmospheric moments. Featurettes explored various aspects of the filmmaking process, From the historical research that informed the Enfield case adaptation to the performance techniques used by the actors, deleted scenes offered additional content for completionist viewers while providing insights into the editing choices that shaped the final theatrical version. These extra materials helped establish the home media release as a comprehensive package that extended the film's value beyond the theatrical experience. The bonus features also included commentary tracks and interviews that provided context about the real-life Warren investigations and the historical accuracy of the depicted events. This educational content helped differentiate Conjuring 2 from purely fictional horror films while satisfying audience curiosity about the true events that inspired the narrative. Reception box office. The Conjuring 2 achieved remarkable commercial success that exceeded industry expectations and demonstrated the continued viability of atmospheric horror films in the contemporary marketplace. The film grossed $102.5 million in the United States and Canada, and $217.9 million in international markets, for a worldwide total gross of $320.4 million. While the film earned slightly less in North America than its predecessor, it performed significantly better in international markets. Overall, The Conjuring 2 made approximately 0.5% more than the original film worldwide, demonstrating the growing global appeal of the Warren universe and supernatural horror content. This international success was particularly significant for the franchise's long-term viability and expansion potential. The film achieved several notable box office records and milestones. It became the highest-grossing horror film of 2016 and the second-highest-grossing horror film of all time, surpassed only by 1973's The Exorcist, $441.3 million. This achievement demonstrated the film's exceptional performance within the horror genre and its ability to generate mainstream commercial appeal. Deadline Hollywood calculated the net profit of The Conjuring 2 to be $98.3 million when factoring together all expenses and revenues, making it the 14th most profitable release of 2016. This profitability metric highlighted the film's efficiency in generating returns on investment, a crucial factor in the decision to expand the Warren universe through additional sequels and spin-off films. The film's domestic opening weekend performance was particularly impressive. Opening alongside major releases Warcraft and Now You See Me Too, The Conjuring 2 was initially projected to gross $35.40 million from 3,343 theaters. However, the film exceeded expectations by grossing $40.4 million from 3,434 theaters, nearly matching its predecessor's $41.9 million opening weekend performance. Several opening weekend records were established by The Conjuring 2's performance. It achieved the biggest opening for a horror film since the original Conjuring in 2013, and the biggest ever horror film opening for the month of June, breaking The Purge's previous record. The film also secured the fifth biggest horror film opening of all time, ranking behind the first Conjuring film, Paranormal Activity 2 and 3, and the 2009 Friday the 13th remake. The film's Thursday night preview performance also exceeded expectations, earning $3.4 million and surpassing its predecessor's $3.3 million preview total. The first day box office performance reached $16.4 million, indicating strong audience interest and positive word-of-mouth momentum. However, The Conjuring 2 experienced a steeper second weekend decline than its predecessor. The film dropped 63.2% in its second weekend, earning $14.8 million from 3,356 theaters. This represented a larger decline than The Conjuring, 46.9%, and Annabelle, 57.3%, suggesting that the sequel was more front-loaded in its audience appeal. Despite the steep second weekend decline, the film continued to perform competitively against other horror releases. Forbes magazine noted that while The Conjuring 2 was falling faster than the previous film, it had already outperformed Insidious, Chapter 2, Annabelle, and both The Purge films at comparable points in their theatrical runs. The international box office performance was particularly strong, with the film being released across 60 countries. The global release strategy proved highly effective, with the film performing exceptionally well in Catholic countries due to its spiritual themes, while also achieving strong results in the UK, where the story was set. Opening weekend international performance was impressive, with the film grossing $51.5 million from 10,400 screens across 44 countries, debuting in second place behind Warcraft. The film added another $43.1 million in its second weekend from 57 countries, surpassing the $100 million international threshold while maintaining a second-place position behind Finding Dory. Record-breaking international performance included the biggest opening day for a horror film in 24 markets, including Mexico, $1.6 million, Brazil, $735,000, Australia, $401,000, and throughout Latin America. Opening weekend records were established in 26 markets, including Mexico, $9 million, Brazil, $4.1 million, and Australia, $3 million. Specific market performance highlights included South Korea, $4 million opening, France, $3.7 million, Spain, $1.85 million, Russia, $1.75 million, and Italy, $1.1 million. In the United Kingdom, the film earned an opening weekend of £4.6 million, $6.8 million, from 504 theatres, more than doubling its predecessor's UK opening performance. The film's biggest international markets included Mexico, $20.3 million total, the United Kingdom, $15.3 million, South Korea, $11.5 million, and India, $11.5 million. In Chile, The Conjuring 2 became the highest-grossing Warner Bros. Film with a total gross of $5.4 million. Critical response: The Conjuring 2 received generally positive reviews from critics, with many praising James Wan's directorial craftsmanship and the continued strong performances by Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga. The film's critical reception demonstrated that sequels could maintain the quality and atmospheric effectiveness of their predecessors when approached with appropriate care and creative vision. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film achieved an 80% approval rating from 254 critics, with an average rating of 6.7. The website's critical consensus read, "The Conjuring 2 can't help but lose a bit of its predecessor's chilly sting through familiarity, but what remains is still a superior ghost story told with spine-tingling skill." This consensus reflected the general critical opinion that while the sequel couldn't completely recapture the original's fresh impact, it maintained high-quality storytelling and effective horror techniques. Metacritic assigned the film a score of 65 out of 100 based on 38 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. This score placed the film in the upper tier of horror sequels and demonstrated consistent critical appreciation for the filmmaking craft and performance quality. Audience reception was equally positive, with CinemaScore polls showing that audiences gave the film an average grade of an A+ to F scale. This matched the grade earned by the original film, indicating that general audiences found the sequel to be equally satisfying and effective as entertainment. The Hollywood Reporter's Sherry Linden offered particularly strong praise, writing, 3 years after The Conjuring rattled the multiplex with old-school horror, director James Wan ups the ante with an excellent sequel. This review highlighted the film's success in building upon the original's foundation while introducing new elements and challenges. Variety's Owen Gleiberman provided a more mixed assessment, acknowledging the film's entertainment value while noting its commercial considerations. On one level, The Conjuring 2 is just a not bad megaplex funhouse movie, no more and no less. But on another level it offers its potential fans a helping of reassurance to go along with the fear. If there are ghost demons out there, then God must be out there as well. The Rap's Alonso Duralde gave the film a positive review, emphasizing its atmospheric consistency. Frightening rarely strikes twice in the same place, despite the efforts of so many horror sequels, but even if The Conjuring 2 doesn't deliver the delightful jolts of its predecessor, it maintains a consistent chill throughout, with the slow and steady dread that creeps up on you over time. More critical perspectives came from Entertainment Weekly's Chris Noshawati, who gave the film a B grade, writing, "There are some solid scares, Wan is too gifted in the dark art of gotcha manipulation to not make you leap a few times, but there's nothing on par with the first film's brilliant hide-and-clap scene with Lily Taylor. This critique highlighted the challenge faced by horror sequels and matching the impact of their predecessors' most memorable moments. Jacob Wilkins of the Cavalier Daily offered strong praise, calling Wan a master of horror and describing the film as fresh, original and unsettling. This review emphasized the film's success in maintaining originality despite working within established franchise parameters. Deadline.com's Pete Hammond expressed pleasant surprise with the sequel, stating, "Wan knows the tricks of this trade, heightened sound effects, moving furniture, dark corners, but somehow miraculously he really puts a fresh spin on it all here. It's riveting stuff, even if in a familiar cinematic environment." Hammond concluded by calling it one hell of a movie. Critics consistently praised several aspects of the film. James Wan's directorial control and atmospheric craftsmanship received widespread acknowledgement, with reviewers noting his ability to build tension and deliver effective scares without relying heavily on jump-scare techniques. The performances by Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga were universally praised for their continued development of the Warren characters and their convincing portrayal of a loving, committed couple facing supernatural challenges. The film's production values, including cinematography, sound design, and practical effects work, received consistent critical appreciation. Many reviewers noted the authentic feel of the 1970s British setting and the convincing recreation of the Enfield case's documented phenomena. Some critics noted that while the film was highly effective as horror entertainment, it faced the inherent challenge of following a breakout original film. The familiarity with the Warren characters and their methodology meant that certain story elements felt less surprising than in the original film, though most critics agreed that this was a minor limitation in an otherwise successful sequel. The film's balance between supernatural horror and family drama received particular critical attention. Many reviewers praised the way the script developed both the Warren family dynamics and the Hodgson family's crisis, creating emotional investment that enhanced the horror element's effectiveness. Critics also noted the film's respectful approach to its real-life source material. The Enfield Poltergeist case's documentation provided a foundation that many reviewers felt added credibility and weight to the supernatural elements, distinguishing the film from purely fictional horror narratives. The critical consensus established The Conjuring 2 as one of the more successful horror sequels of the 2010s. Maintaining the quality standards set by its predecessor while expanding the Warren universe in compelling directions. This critical foundation would prove important for the continued development of the franchise and its various spin-off properties. Legacy and impact. The Conjuring 2's success had significant implications for the horror genre and franchise filmmaking in general. The film demonstrated that atmospheric, character-driven horror could compete effectively with action-oriented blockbuster entertainment in the summer movie marketplace, challenging conventional wisdom about horror film release strategies. The success of the demon nun character, portrayed by Bonnie Aarons, led directly to the development of the Nun spin-off film, which was announced in June 2016. This spin-off, focusing on the demon nun character Vivek, entered development with David Leslie Johnson writing the script and Peter Safran and James Wan producing. The Nun was ultimately released in September 2018, demonstrating the franchise's ability to generate successful secondary properties. The film's international success proved particularly important for Warner Bros. And New Line Cinema's franchise strategy. The strong overseas performance demonstrated that the Warren characters and supernatural horror concepts had global appeal, encouraging investment in additional franchise properties and international marketing efforts. James Wan's comments about potential future sequels indicated the franchise's long-term viability. Speaking about the Warren case files, Wan noted, "There could be many more Conjuring movies because the Warrens have so many stories." This statement established the franchise's potential for continued expansion based on documented paranormal investigations. The film's production techniques, particularly its balance of practical and digital effects, influenced subsequent horror film production approaches. The decision to maintain tactile, believable supernatural elements while incorporating digital enhancement became a model for atmospheric horror filmmaking that prioritized audience immersion over spectacular visual effects. The success of The Conjuring 2 also validated the continued viability of R-rated horror content in the contemporary marketplace. At a time when many studios were pursuing PG-13 ratings to maximize audience reach, The Conjuring 2's success demonstrated that mature horror content could achieve both critical approval and commercial success when executed with appropriate skill and creative vision. The film's approach to sequel development, maintaining original creative personnel while expanding narrative scope, became a template for successful franchise continuation. The retention of James Wan as director, Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga as leads, and key creative personnel helped ensure continuity of vision while allowing for fresh story elements and new challenges. Industry analysis of The Conjuring 2's success emphasized the importance of building genuine scares through atmospheric tension rather than relying primarily on jump scare techniques. This approach influenced subsequent horror film production and marketing strategies, encouraging filmmakers to invest in sustained atmospheric development rather than relying on momentary shock effects. The film's respectful treatment of real-life paranormal investigators and documented cases established a model for horror films based on allegedly true events. The balance between entertainment value and respect for source material became a reference point for subsequent films exploring similar territory. Awards recognition included nominations from the Saturn Awards for Best Horror Film, acknowledging the film's achievement within genre filmmaking. While horror films rarely receive major mainstream awards recognition, the industry acknowledgement confirmed The Conjuring 2's standing as exceptional genre filmmaking. The development of The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, the third film in the main Warren series, confirmed the franchise's continued viability and audience interest. The successful progression from The Conjuring through The Conjuring 2 to subsequent entries demonstrated the sustainable nature of the Warren character foundation and supernatural investigation format. Educational and cultural impact included increased public interest in the real-life Warren investigations and the historical cases depicted in the films. The Enfield Poltergeist case, in particular, received renewed attention and analysis following the film's release, demonstrating horror cinema's ability to generate interest in paranormal research and historical events. The film's success also contributed to a broader revival of atmospheric horror filmmaking in the late 2010s, with several other productions attempting to recreate the careful balance of character development, historical authenticity, and supernatural terror that characterized the Conjuring series. Conclusion: The Conjuring 2 stands as a remarkable achievement in sequel filmmaking, successfully building upon its predecessor's foundation while establishing its own distinct identity and atmospheric effectiveness. Through careful attention to character development, historical authenticity, and sophisticated horror craftsmanship, James Wan and his collaborators created a film that honored both its source material and its audience's expectations. The film's commercial success, earning over $320 million worldwide, demonstrated the continued viability of atmospheric horror in the contemporary entertainment marketplace. More importantly, its critical reception confirmed that horror sequels could maintain artistic integrity and emotional authenticity while delivering the genre thrills that audiences expected. The development of The Conjuring 2 from initial concept through theatrical release represents a masterclass in franchise filmmaking. The collaborative writing process, careful casting decisions, strategic production planning, and thoughtful post-production refinements combined to create a cohesive vision that respected both the Warren legacy and the specific historical events that inspired the narrative. Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga's continued development of the Warren characters provided emotional continuity that grounded the supernatural elements in recognizable human relationships and genuine caring. Their portrayal of committed couple facing extraordinary challenges together offered audiences both relatable character dynamics and inspirational relationship modeling. The film's technical achievements, from Joseph Bishara's atmospheric score to Don Burgess's cinematography to the carefully balanced practical and digital effects work, established new standards for contemporary horror filmmaking. The commitment to creating believable supernatural phenomena through sophisticated but unobtrusive technical means allowed audiences to focus on character and story rather than being distracted by obvious digital effects. The respectful treatment of the Enfield Poltergeist case and the real-life individuals involved demonstrated how horror entertainment could honor its source material while still delivering effective genre thrills. This balance between historical authenticity and creative interpretation became a model for subsequent films exploring allegedly true paranormal events. The international success of The Conjuring 2 confirmed the universal appeal of well-crafted horror storytelling and the Warren characters specifically. The film's ability to perform strongly in diverse cultural contexts while maintaining its essential American character and approach demonstrated the global reach possible for expertly crafted genre filmmaking. Looking toward the future, The Conjuring 2's success established the foundation for continued franchise expansion, including both direct sequels and spin-off properties. The film's proof that atmospheric horror could compete with major blockbuster entertainment encouraged continued investment in sophisticated genre filmmaking. The legacy of The Conjuring 2 extends beyond its immediate commercial and critical success to encompass its influence on horror filmmaking approaches, franchise development strategies, and audience expectations for genre entertainment. The film demonstrated that horror audiences would respond enthusiastically to sophisticated, character-driven supernatural narratives that respected both their intelligence and their desire for genuine scares. As a sequel, The Conjuring 2 achieved the difficult balance of honoring its predecessor while establishing its own identity and expanding the universe's possibilities for future exploration. As a horror film, it confirmed the continued vitality of atmospheric, character-driven supernatural narratives in contemporary cinema. As a commercial entertainment, it proved that quality genre filmmaking could achieve both artistic integrity and mainstream success. The enduring appeal of The Conjuring 2 lies in its successful synthesis of historical authenticity, character development, technical craftsmanship, and genuine horror effectiveness. These elements combined to create an experience that satisfied both critical expectations and audience desires, establishing the film as a standout achievement in contemporary horror cinema and a worthy successor to its acclaimed predecessor. The film's continued popularity and influence on subsequent horror productions confirm its significance within genre filmmaking history. The Conjuring 2 represents both a successful sequel and an important contribution to the ongoing evolution of supernatural horror cinema, demonstrating that traditional horror values could thrive in contemporary entertainment contexts when approached with appropriate skill, respect, and creative vision. Review.1 The Conjuring 2 is an American feature film of the horror genre with an emphasis on haunted houses, ghostly occurrences and demonic possession, or, as I like to call it, One Crazy-Ass Friday Night. It is the second film in the Conjuring film series and takes place after the 2013 movie The Conjuring. The film was directed by James Wan with the screenplay written by Wan, Carrie W. Hayes, Chad Hayes, and David Leslie Johnson, based upon a story treatment by James Wan and Carrie Chad Hayes. It was produced by Rat Pack Dune Entertainment, The Saffron Company, and New Line Cinema. It premiered in the United States on June 10, 2016. The movie stars Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, both of whom reprise their respective roles from the first film as Ed and Lorraine Warren, which are based on two actual paranormal investigators who journeyed to North London, England to investigate ghostly hauntings at the Hodgson residence. Brought to you by the same director and writing team that crafted The Conjuring. Exterior on-location footage was filmed in parts of Hodgson and Nottingham, England. Studio shots were filmed in California. The Conjuring 2 closed out of theaters on August 25, 2016. It had been in release for a total of 11 weeks, 77 days. At its widest release, The Conjuring 2 was screened in 3,356 theaters. The Conjuring 2 was released on Blu-ray by Warner Bros. On September 13, 2016. Special features on the Blu-ray include deleted scenes, ultraviolet digital download options, and several featurettes including The Enfield Poltergeist, Living the Horror, Crafting the Conjuring, Creating Crooked, The Conjuring 2, Hollywood's Haunted Stage, and sounds of scary. There are 33 credited cast members in this film. The tagline for this film is "The next true story from the case files of Ed and Lorraine Warren." The events of this film are loosely based on actual haunted occurrences that took place in Enfield, England between 1977 and 1979. Several paranormal investigators have researched the affair, though Ed and Lorraine Warren's involvement in the Enfield incident was fairly minimal. They did conclude, however, that the house was under the throes of demonic possession. Vic, the demon nun, makes a cameo appearance in a photograph in the 2017 film Annabelle: Creation. Vic also makes an appearance in an after-credit scene in the film. Vic will become the featured entity in the 2018 sequel The Nun. Joseph Bishara, who is the composer on The Conjuring 2, also plays the role of the demon. He likewise played the demon character in the spin-off films Annabelle and Annabelle: Creation. On the first day of shooting, a priest was brought in to bless the set. The opening scene of the film takes place at 112 Ocean Avenue in New York. On November 13, 1974, Ronald DeFeo used a shotgun to murder both of his parents, Ronald DeFeo, Sr., and Louise DeFeo, as well as his 4 younger siblings Don, Allison, Mark and John. In 1975, George and Kathy Lutz moved into the 112 Ocean Avenue house. They remained there for only 28 days and abandoned it with claims that the house was haunted. This became the basis for the Amityville horror novel by Jay Anson, as well as the 1979 horror film by Stuart Rosenberg. Ed and Lorraine Warren were investigators on the Lutz family's claims. This movie was released on the same day as Now You See Me Too, another film which is the second installment in a series. The Conjuring. This article pertains to a film installment from the Conjuring film series. This template will categorize articles that include it into the Conjuring films category. The Conjuring: The Devil Made Me Do It is an American feature film of the horror genre with an emphasis on the ghost, demonic, true crime and paranormal thriller subgenres. It is the third installment in the Conjuring film series and the 8th film in the greater Conjuring universe. It was directed by Michael Chaves with a screenplay written by David Leslie Johnson. It was produced by Atomic Monster, The Saffron Company, and New Line Cinema and distributed through Warner Brothers. It was released theatrically in the United States and on Simulcast 3, on June 4, 2021. The film stars Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga reprising their respective roles as Ed and Lorraine Warren from the previous films, which are loosely based on actual ghost hunters. Also starring in the film is Julian Hilliard as David Glatzel, Charlene Amoya as Judy Glatzel, Sir Catherine Hook as Debbie Glatzel, and Rory O'Connor as Arn Johnson. The story follows the true case of Arn Cheyenne Johnson, who stabbed his landlord Alan Bono to death on February 16, 1981. At his trial, he claimed "the devil made me do it," marking the first time that demonic possession was ever used as a defense in a criminal trial. On Saturday, July 18, 1981, paranormal researcher and demonologist Ed Warren and his psychically attuned wife Lorraine come to the aid of 8-year-old David Glatzel at the family's new home in Brookfield, Connecticut. David is possessed by a demon, and the Warrens work with his parents, older sister Debbie and Debbie's boyfriend Arn Johnson to keep him contained. Once David is temporarily calmed down, he is sent off to bed. Having received approval for an exorcism, the Warrens await the arrival of Father Gordon. The priest is dropped off by taxi cab and then tours the house where he begins preparing the rites of exorcism. David is suddenly awakened by repeated tremendous banging noise. He runs into the bathroom and hides in the bathtub. Looking up, he notes that the shower curtain rings are actually the curled fingers of some demonic creature. David retreats, but feels suffocated. He explodes from the bathtub and curls up in the corner. When his parents hear him shouting, they race upstairs. As David's father opens the door, the boy races towards him with a knife and stabs him in the right knee. Ed Warren picks David up and races him downstairs. As David flails in his arms, claw marks can be seen appearing on the walls. Father Gordon recommends getting the boy to the church immediately for the exorcism, but Ed Warren refuses, citing that the priest must conduct the exorcism now. David Glatzel's body contorts and convulses, and he uses telekinesis to make items fly all about the kitchen. A plate strikes Father Gordon, disrupting the exorcism. In the middle of the chaos, Lorraine begins having a psychic flash of some sort of mystical item. David leaps upward and attacks Ed Warren, placing his fingers upon his chest, growling, "I will stop your heart, old man." Arn Johnson pulls David away and screams at the invading entity, "Leave him alone and take me." The presence agrees and the demon abandons David's body and enters Arn. However, Arn appears to be perfectly normal and the exorcism concludes. Lorraine screams for someone to call 911 as Ed Warren suffers a massive heart attack. About a week passes and things appear to start getting back to normal. Arn Johnson and Debbie Glatzel live together in the upper loft of the Brookfield boarding kennels, which is managed by a man named Bruno Sauls. They entertain the notion of running away together despite their lack of income. When Debbie hears a ruckus downstairs amongst the dogs, she goes down and deals with Bruno. The weekend is just around the corner, and she gives him instructions on how to treat each of the animals. Not wishing to do Debbie's work, Bruno makes it a point to indicate that he lets her live there rent-free. Bruno then offers Arn $5 to fix a broken stereo system. Arn tells him that he'll look at it later, but he wants $15. Bruno settles on $10. That weekend, Arn is at a Glatzel family get-together. While most of the family are outside dressing the picnic table, Arn is playing football with David. Debbie asks him to go inside to get the meat. Inside the kitchen, Arn notices a box of cereal suddenly move, then fall onto the floor, spilling its contents. A mice scurries out of the box, and Arn follows it to a hole in the wall. He stares intently through the hole, but as he turns around, he is accosted by the image of a menacing lanky woman that screams at him. That evening at the Brookfield General Hospital, Lorraine keeps steady vigil over the unconscious Ed Warren. Father Gordon comes to pay a visit. Lorraine tells him how she first came to meet Ed as a movie theater when she was 17 years old. She was a customer and he was an usher. It was love at first sight. He took her out for ice cream after his shift ended. The following day, Arnie is at work at the right tree service. He is on a customer's property high up in a tree preparing to cut down a heavy branch with a chainsaw. He looks towards the upstairs window of the house on the property and sees the same dark-clad witchy woman staring back at him. Arn fumbles while trying to get the chainsaw to start, and the active device slips from his fingers, nearly hitting a coworker. Not feeling very well, Arn decides to leave work early. Arn goes over to the Brookfield boarding kennels to meet up with Debbie. Bruno is there and is highly intoxicated. He tries to get Arn to drink some beer with him. Arn turns him down and then Bruno cranks up the stereo that Arn repaired and begins dancing to Call Me by Blondie. Coaxing Arn and Debbie into dancing with him, Bruno relates how he once saw Blondie in Sydney, Australia. Meanwhile, back at the Brookfield General Hospital, Ed Warren suddenly awakens. Lorraine is present as his daughter Judy. Ed tries warning them about the demon. Lorraine assures him that David Glatzel is fine, but Ed corrects her, indicating that he saw the entity go into Arn. Lorraine tries telephoning the kennel, but because Bruno has the stereo turned up too loud, nobody can hear the phone. She then telephones Sergeant Thomas of the Brookfield Police Department and warns him that something horrible is about to happen. At the kennel, Bruno continues to insist himself upon Arn and Debbie. Arn lingers about, still feeling very disoriented. Bruno gets too handsy with Debbie until Arn finally pulls her away. He then hallucinates an image of Bruno as a monstrous creature lunging at Debbie. Picking up Bruno's knife, he attacks him, stabbing him 22 times in the chest until he is dead. In a haze, Arn lumbers down the street, his clothes drenched in blood. A police car stops by and Arn listlessly tells the officer, "I think I heard someone." Ed Warren is released from the hospital and Lorraine takes him down the steps in a wheelchair. The Warrens go to visit Arn Johnson, who has been arrested and is now in prison. During the visit, they place several religious items before him and have him read a passage from the Bible. He does not demonstrate any obvious signs of possession. Lorraine notes that the presence of religious objects should be enough to provoke an inhuman spirit, to say nothing of the lack of reaction from reading from the Bible. Ed adds that just because Arn is not currently possessed, it does not mean that he wasn't at the time of the murder. The Warrens go to see Aaron's defense attorney. She does not want to enter a plea of not guilty by reason of demonic possession. Ed points out precedents in 2 cases that took place in England. He adds, "The court accepts the existence of God every time a witness swears to tell the truth. I think it's about time they accept the existence of the devil." The lawyer asks how they expect to convince a jury if they can't even convince her. Ed invites the lawyer to come to their house for dinner. He tells her that they'll have her Annabelle. The following morning during the arraignment, the very distraught lawyer enters a plea of not guilty by reason of demonic possession. After the arraignment, the lawyer meets the Warrens outside on the courthouse steps. She tells them that the lead prosecutor is going for the death penalty. It's all up to the Warrens now. Aaron Johnson will live or die based on whatever evidence they find. Ed doesn't even know where to begin with this investigation. "We never had to prove possession after the fact." Lorraine says they need to go back to the beginning. Flashback. It is several weeks prior to the July 18th exorcism. The Glatzels are just moving into their new home. Aaron Johnson is there helping out. He is having fun with Debbie and carries her across the threshold of the house as if they were newlyweds. David Glatzel carries a box of toys upstairs and brings them to a master bedroom that has a waterbed. David is excited by this discovery and begins jumping up and down on the bed. A gruesome face appears beneath the canvas, which startles David. Then a demonic hand pokes out from the mattress and grabs him by the arm. David screams and manages to pull himself free. Mother Judy runs into the room to console him, but there is no evidence of anything wrong with the bed. In the present, Ed and Lorraine, accompanied by their cameraman Drew and Father Gordon, return to the Glatzel house. Debbie takes them upstairs to the room where the waterbed used to be. It has since been converted into a sewing room, though Debbie refers to it as a guest room. She points to the spot where the bed once rested. Ed pulls up the rug to see a blackened stain of rot on the floor. Whatever initiated this lies beneath the house. Ed, Lorraine and Debbie go outside to the doors leading into the crawl space. Ed prefers to go crawling through it himself, concerned that Lorraine might get her dress dirty. Lorraine shoots him a look and rolls up her sleeves. Debbie tells her that the guest room is located some 15 feet to the right. Lorraine crawls through dirt and grime and gets startled by a rat. She pushes through a plastic barrier, where she finds even more rats scurrying about, something wrapped in cloth. Pulling back the cloth, she finds an object that is constructed out of bones. It is a witch's totem. Lorraine suddenly experiences an intense psychic flash. She takes several photographs and goes back topside. In the kitchen, Lorraine, Ed, Drew, Father Gordon and Debbie discuss the photographs. The Warrens explain that David wasn't just possessed, he was cursed. Whoever placed this object summoned the demon, and on the night of the exorcism, the curse passed from David to Aaron. Per the standards of this particular kind of curse, once the demon is summoned, the possessed individual takes a life and then the demon departs, which is why Aaron no longer appears to be affected. Father Gordon tells the Warrens that they should seek out the advice of a retired priest named Father Kastner, who has experience with satanic cults. The following morning, Ed and Lorraine drive out to see Father Kastner, who lives in an old red farmhouse some distance away from Brookfield. Father Kastner finishes feeding his chickens, then invites them inside. After the Warrens explain why they are there, Ed shows Kastner the photo of the witch's totem. He asks him why would David Glatzel be targeted, but Kastner tells him that the why is irrelevant. Kastner brings them down into the basement of their home. Lorraine doesn't like the feeling of this place, but descends the steps regardless. What they find is a room filled with occult objects on various shelves, not dissimilar to their own occult museum back at their home in Monroe. Kastner tells them that he likes taking guns off the street. Sitting behind a desk, he explains that the witch's totem is connected to the Disciples of the Ram, a cult that he had helped to expose some 10-12 years ago. He explained how the lead prosecutor of the trial had a wife who was pregnant. A few days after the cult members were all found guilty, the woman gave birth 6 weeks early. The infant was born with its heart outside of its body. 3 months later, the woman committed suicide by laying her neck on a railroad track and allowing a train to run her over. All of this is to demonstrate how dangerous the cult can be. He warns that if they intend on safeguarding Aaron Johnson's soul, then they must be prepared to give up everything they have. When the Warrens received notice that detectives from Danvers, Massachusetts found a similar totem in the death of Kata Lincoln, who was also stabbed 22 times, they traveled there. The totem was found as the home of Katie's friend Jessica, who was missing. Lorraine learns through a vision that Jessica had murdered Katie while possessed before jumping to her death, which allows detectives to recover her body. She also witnesses the occultist attempting to make Arn kill himself but stops her, causing the occultist to become aware of the Warrens' presence. A book of Stygian witchcraft states that for the curse to be lifted, the occultist's altar must be destroyed. Ed is affected by the curse when a totem is discovered in the Warrens' house. He almost stabs Lorraine but is stopped by their assistant Drew. Kastner reveals that the occultist is in fact his daughter, Isla. He had secretly raised her in violation of the requirement of clerical celibacy in the Catholic Church. As he researched the occult, Isla grew fascinated by it and became an occultist. He leads Lorraine into the tunnels underneath the house, where her altar is, but Isla kills her father, then curses Ed and Arn, causing Ed to try to kill Lorraine and Arn to try and kill himself. Ed regains his senses when Lorraine reminds him of their love, and destroys the altar, saving Arn as well. Isla is killed by the demon she'd summoned after failing to complete the curse. Ed places the cup from the altar in the Warrens' artifact room, along with the Lovick painting and the Annabelle doll. Arn is convicted of manslaughter and serves a sentence of 5 years, marrying Debbie while in prison. Review. 2 In Enfield, North London, a young girl is repeatedly haunted by a malicious poltergeist. Fearing for her immortal soul, the Catholic Church asks Ed and Lorraine Warren to fly to England to verify the case. When they get there, the pair are faced with an evil unlike anything they've encountered. After his billion-dollar diversion with Fast Furious 7, it would have been all too easy for James Wan to stay away from horror to show that there was more to him than an ability to create scary monsters and super creeps. But the man who created the Saw, Insidious and Conjuring franchises doesn't see horror movies as a ghetto from which to escape. He sees it as home. When jump scares are done well, they can turn a horror film into a wonderful communal experience. And so, at the first opportunity, he returns to doing what he does best with this sequel to 2014's surprise smash, The Conjuring. Like that movie, this follows the adventures of real-life Ghostbusters, Ed and Lorraine Warren, Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, as they poke their beaks into a nasty case of demonic possession. Unlike the first movie, which took place in 1971 in an isolated Rhode Island farmhouse that seemed built specifically to house horrific goings-on, this time the Warrens rock up in the London of 1977, or, specifically, Enfield, North London, to investigate a poltergeist that seems to have set its sights on Janet Hodgson, a teenager living out a normal life with her mom and siblings in a terraced home. At first the drabness of this house seems antithetical to spooks and scares, but the normality of the environment only accentuates the horror. It's likely that, if we didn't grow up in a house just like this one, we had friends who did. It's all too easy to let your imagination run wild when the events unfolding on screen do so in a location that feels so familiar. The shift in milieu is also interesting because the end of the first movie hinted heavily that the sequel would focus on the Warrens' involvement with the Amityville horror. Indeed, that's where we first meet them, as the more spiritually gifted Lorraine is immersed in a terrifying vision from which she barely emerges. However, perhaps because that story has been so well documented as to contain little in the way of surprises, Wan zips beyond that to the Enfield case, which, although famous, perhaps isn't as played out as Amityville. For a while, as with the original, we get two movies running on parallel tracks, flitting between the Hodgsons, as Janet and her mom Peggy, Frances O'Connor, excellent, try desperately to cope with constant spectral invasion, and the Warrens as they recuperate at home, waiting for the calm to turn into a storm. But when the Warrens pitch up in London, the intensity is driven up a notch. Proof that horror films can be sweet, surprising, and even charming, even ones with demonic nuns. While Wan plays fast and loose with the facts of the case, placing Ed and Lorraine at the center of events here, they didn't appear at all in last year's excellent Sky One drama, the Enfield haunting, he also creates an escalating series of superb shocks. Jump scares are often sneered at, and they are often the easy way out. Something leaps out from the edge of the frame, accompanied by loud noises. Job's done. Yet when they're done well, they can turn a horror film into a wonderful communal experience. As you scream, you're also laughing because you know that you've been head-conned, even into jumping out of your seat. Very few modern horror filmmakers can time a jump scare as effectively as Wan, and he delivers here, his constantly roving camera finding all kinds of nooks and crannies in which evil can lurk. There are some great ideas at the shot where Janet finds herself in a room filled with crucifixes, only to find them turning slowly upside down is a belter, and it's often enormous fun. Best seen with a crowd. The standout moment, though, comes when Wan bolts his camera to the floor and lets the conversation between Wilson's Ed and the demon, which calls itself Bill Wilkins, play out in a single shot. As events unfold, ending in an operatic showdown between the Warrens and the demonic entity, it does get a little hokey. The dull, drab house just happens to have a massive cellar, and cliché-tilde copyrights aren't exactly inconspicuous. However, the performances are excellent across the board, while Wilson and Farmiga are tremendous as a married couple utterly devoted to each other. Their relationship is the movie's emotional anchor, and proves that horror films can be sweet, surprising, and even charming. Even ones with demonic nuns. Review. 3 The cast of James Wan's latest horror film, The Conjuring 2. Vera Farmiga, Patrick Wilson, Francis O'Connor, Madison Wolfe and Lauren Esposito took to the red carpet Tuesday evening at the TCL Chinese Theatre in Hollywood, a follow-up to The Conjuring. The film focuses on a couple, Ed and Lorraine, in the 1970s as they learn of supernatural occurrences in Enfield, England. After Lorraine's encounter with the supernatural 6 years prior, they are hesitant to get involved. Despite their uncertainty, they set out for London and discover just how similar their story is to Enfield. Director Wan tells The Hollywood Reporter why telling Ed and Lorraine Warren's story was no easy task the second time around. The first movie was easy. There was no one breathing down my neck and looking over my shoulder, Wan said. Coming to this, it was very difficult just from an emotional standpoint to try and make a movie that honors what the people love about the first one so much. Co-writer Chad Hayes added, "We just wanted to do the James Cameron rule, where the sequel should be better than the original. When we had the success that we did, we had to make the second one better than the first one." The Conjuring 2, like the first film, is based on actual case files and true-life testaments from people who experienced two similar situations on different sides of the world. Co-writer Carrie Hayes tells THR, "You don't have to make anything up. Horror happens anywhere around the world, with any religion, with anybody, and the opportunity to go and to explore what happened in England. It's just the beginning, because every country has their own crazy story." Harping on the film's theme, Francis O'Connor added, "I got totally freaked out prepping for it. I actually brought crystals to wear on set, and then I got to set and it was fine. Just come and see it. You'll have a great scare." Review. 4 Frightening rarely strikes twice in the same place. Despite the efforts of so many horror sequels, but even if The Conjuring 2 doesn't deliver the delightful jolts of its predecessor, it maintains a consistent chill throughout, with the slow and steady dread that creeps up on you over time. And let's just forget Annabelle ever happened, shall we? Focusing on the mutually supportive relationships between ghost chasers Ed, Patrick Wilson, and Lorraine Warren, Vera Farmiga, The Conjuring 2 is as interested in the power of love and marriage as it is in furniture smashing itself against the wall and levitating children speaking with the voices of craggy old dead men. Once again, the Warrens just can't keep out of creepy basements. A pre-credits sequence finds them investigating the haunted Lutz home in Amityville, New York, the 1970s haunting that, real or not, made the couple famous. During as copyright ants, Lorraine steps into the shoes of the man who murdered his family there before encountering a horrifying nun, one whose ghastly pallor suggests Sister Marilyn Manson. Returning to her own body, Lorraine gasps, "This is as close to hell as I ever want to get," not the smart thing to say before the titles have even come up. Besides seeing the Twisted Sister, Lorraine also had a vision of Ed's death, making her want to give up the demon-busting business. Her dreams of retirement are shattered just a year or so later when young Janet Hodgson, Madison Wolfe, Joy, starts teleporting through the floor of her home in Enfield, a working-class borough of London. Creepy toys start coming to life, weird noises come out of the walls, and it's more than single mom Peggy, Frances O'Connor, the missing, can handle. The Hodgsons have gone to the media before going to the Warrens, which means our heroes have to contend with the attentions of fellow paranormal experts, some dubious, and others credulous. And while a council flat in Enfield certainly wouldn't be Edgar Allan Poe's idea of a haunted mansion, returning production designer Julie Berghoff provides plenty of unsettling dark corners, plus a level of damp, draft and rot that we rarely see when Hollywood shows British homes. Berghoff and her team also do a great job of capturing 1977 interior design choices, from the posters of David Solan New Avengers heir Joanna Lumley and the Hodgson girls' room matching the photos of the real thing that run under the closing credits, to the then ubiquitous Will Ariel Durant The Story of Civilization collection on the Warrens' bookshelf. Director James Wan, perhaps mixing things up after Furious 7, takes a measured approach here. There are a lot fewer jump scares than there were in the first Conjuring, but he and the four credited screenwriters do at least play with the requisite haunted house playbook here, with some interesting misdirects and an undercurrent of unease that escalates so very subtly. In the first two Insidious films, Wan gave actresses like Rose Byrne and Lynn Shay a platform to play steely, multifaceted characters, and The Conjuring 2 provides similar opportunities to Farmiga and O'Connor even when they're rightly scared out of their wits. Neither is a shrinking violet, and both are bound and determined to protect their families. One might question what happens to the Warrens' teenage daughter when her parents drops off to England to chase ghosts over Christmas, but perhaps she's spending the holidays with friends in an unhaunted house. Wilson finds the witty undertones in what could have been a hopelessly square-jawed hero, and it's fun to see character actors like Simon McBurney, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, Franco Potenti, Run Lola Run, and Maria Doyle Kennedy, Sing Street, in full-on 1970s wigs and lapels. Audiences expecting a repeat fright fest might be disappointed in the relative restraint of The Conjuring 2. But the sequel, a lesser but not entirely unequally, has its own goosebumps to raise. Review. 5 There's not much magic in The Conjuring 2, Warner Brothers. What this possession-themed horror story does have are two principal spirits haunting folks throughout. One of them a demon nun, this being another episode from the true files of the energetically self-promoting demonologists and lay exorcists Ed and Lorraine Warren. An overlay of Catholic imagery is to be expected. The spectral woman religious is too over-the-top and redolent of a Halloween party to actually offend people of faith. Then again, she's too poorly utilized by director James Wan to inspire much fright, either. After the habited demon's first appearance in one of Lorraine's visions, Wan keeps her off the screen for more than an hour, and instead focuses on a grumpy poltergeist named Bill, Bob Adrian. Speaking of habits, Bill's sole goal is to have the rundown London dwelling in which he died all to himself so he can keep on sitting in the decaying leather chair upon which he expired. This Archie Bunker-like seating preference proves inconvenient for the house's current occupants, Mom Peggy Hodgson, Frances O'Connor, and her 4 children, which is where the Warrens, Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, come in. Fresh off their famous dealings with the haunted house in Amityville, New York, the couple is struggling with the resulting notoriety and public skepticism. Ed, who died in 2006, billed himself as the only American layman permitted by the Catholic Church to perform exorcisms. In 1985, however, Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, the future Pope Benedict XVI, then head of the Vatican Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, banned laypeople from performing the rite. No exorcism goes on here. Ed and Lorraine make it clear that they're on a less specific mission from the church after Father Gordon, Steve Coulter, asks them to go to London out of compassion for the bedeviled family. As in any Dracula movie, Ed brandishes the crucifix around his neck to keep cantankerous Bill at bay once the latter has occupied the body of Peggy's 11-year-old daughter, Janet, Madison Wolfe. Ed encourages poor Janet by repeating what an aunt once told him in childhood: God will be there for all who need. This caper is based on a real series of events known as the Enfield Poltergeist, involving telekinesis and strange voices. Speculation about what really happened in Enfield became an enjoyable cottage industry and provided fodder for Britain's tabloid press. As the script co-written by Wan brothers Carey and Chad Hayes and David Johnson acknowledges, though, pranks by the children of the household may have been responsible for at least some of the busted crockery and bent spoons. Still, such rational explanations don't stop Sister What's-Her-Name from taunting sweet Lorraine. Good thing Lorraine makes copious margin notes in her Bible. The film contains occult themes, a skewed presentation of Catholic faith practices and intense action sequences, some of them involving gun violence. A 3R Review. 6 When I saw The Conjuring 3 years ago, I wasn't overly aware of the fact that I was watching a horror movie. Obviously, I knew it was a horror movie. It's not like I walked in blind, completely unaware what kind of movie I was paying to see. Even if I had, all of the early jump scares would have been a pretty big hint. However, it never felt like a standard horror movie to me, at least not the ones populating the multiplexes these days. Instead, it recalled old-fashioned, classic haunted house movies, mixing together the Amityville horror with Poltergeist before taking a hard turn into The Exorcist. More importantly, it was a character drama first, haunted house movie second, and the investment we had in the characters carried us through the ever-escalating paranormal activities. By the end of The Conjuring 2, I was fully aware that I was watching a horror movie, albeit a well-executed one, and the turn left me a tad disappointed. The Conjuring movies are about real-life demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren, played by Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga Warrens, presented here as wholly good and caring people. Somewhere in the final act of Conjuring 2, Ed is turned into an idiotic action hero and the Warrens go up against an over-the-top foe with a vendetta. It's not bad, per se, it's just a tad generic, certainly beneath the rest of the film. In attempting to top the first Conjuring, they concocted a final act which swerves just a little too far off the path into standard genre fare. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. At the start of Conjuring 2, Ed and Lorraine have already moved on to the Amityville haunting in Long Island, as teased at the end of the last film. Since the Amityville case has been documented and disputed to death by this point, Conjuring 2 wisely offers but a mere glimpse of the Warrens' experience in the house, reminding us of Lorraine's powers of clairvoyance and establishing a demonic nun who will eventually factor heavily into their next case. And that next case takes them to a broken bar if you have a passing interest in the paranormal. Enfield, London 1977 might be all the explanation you need. It's one of the more famous haunted house stories in recent times, to the point that Sky TV just aired a Timothy Spall starring miniseries about it last year. One of Conjuring 2's producers admitted the case was very Googleable. To be honest, though, The Conjuring 2 is actually my first exposure to this infamous, but widely disputed poltergeist story. The tale concerns a single mother named Peggy Hodgson, Frances O'Connor, her 4 children, 2 girls and 2 boys, and their modest North London home. The youngest of the bunch, Billy, Benjamin Hay, speaks with the stutter, and the youngest of the 2 girls, Janet, Madison Wolfe, a Louisiana native who is fully convincing as a shy British tween, is desperate to look cool in front of her friends. The other 2 children, 13-year-old Margaret, Lauren Esposito, and 10-year-old Johnny, Patrick Macaulay, register as believable kids, but your attention is naturally drawn to Billy and Janet as the 2 most vulnerable and thus most likely to be possessed. The film gets there eventually, but it's not exactly in a rush about it. We have to periodically cut back to the Warrens and chart Lorraine's post-Amityville weariness as well as Ed's anger at being continually called a fraud by academics on the talk show circuit. There has to be a scene or 2 exploring Peggy's plight as a single mother, and observing her despair when old shit keeps breaking down in the house. Once the haunting finally commences, it still takes a while before Ed and Lorraine are sucked into it. This is roughly the same formula as the first Conjuring, and it's a large reason why that film felt so character-driven. In Conjuring 2, it again feels character-driven, but the combination of dual settings and characters whose narratives eventually intertwine feels a bit more disjointed, as if the Warrens don't truly belong in this story. Arguably, the more interesting narrative is that of the two members of the British Society for Psychic Research, Maurice Grosse, played by Simon McBride, and Anita Gregory, played by Franco Potenti, who work the case and deeply disagree over whether or not it is a hoax. Maybe it's the X-Files fan in me that's drawn to that. However, since the Warrens do eventually factor into the story, as they did in real life at the very end, both Grosse and Gregory are underexplored and underexplained, and the Warrens are burdened with a ham-fisted jaws, the revenge-esque linking mechanism to explain why we keep cutting to them. So, the story construction is not quite as strong this time, but the paranormal moments are as masterful as ever. Another case of James Wan showing everyone else how this should be done. Spoiler: the poltergeist ultimately fixates on Janet, not Billy, and an early sequence involving her barricading herself in her room showcases Wan's brilliant use of sound design to maximize the psychological horror. As he told The Frame, just to give it a bit more context, that one moment is very important because I wanted to shoot the sequence where the little girl goes into the room a broken bar to barricade the door. Then, when she runs to the bed, the camera follows her and we stay on her. Off camera we don't see it and we hear something getting thumped and then we hear something getting dragged away. I think that is the kind of stuff that sends a chill down your spine because you're not expecting that to happen. The fact that it all happened off camera and only using sound design, it just fires up your imagination even more as to what that could be. So much of all this is about building anticipation. For me, what usually makes a horror sequence scary is the journey, not the destination. Of course, the sound design must ultimately work in concert with the visuals, and for the latter, Wan recruited Don Burgess to serve as Conjuring 2's cinematographer. The Forrest Gump, Castaway, Contact and What Lies Beneath veterans' mastery of shadows is on full display in one drawing room sequence which continually tricks the eye. I could keep going. There's a remarkably clever new horror spin on a situation you might recognize from E.T. Our horror movie train expectations are repeatedly subverted. For example, if you think someone's about to be attacked, think again about that seemingly safe other person across the room. Blurry background characters haunt us even more if they had been visible. Little Madison Wolfe is an absolute revelation as Janet, displaying a desperation beyond her years, and Wilson and Farmiga are again reliable as the Warrens. Although due to the first Conjuring work this hard to make them seem so saint-like, it's easily the scariest movie of the year. Then there's that final act where, some fairly stupid things happen. Characters oddly fail to ask the obvious questions. In construction, major spoiler alert, it's ultimately a repeat of the first film's ending, just turned up to 11, and twisted to briefly nod toward the wide belief that Janet and her sister faked the whole thing. However, that sobering acknowledgement is followed up by supernatural craziness which feels more in line with Wan's other haunted house franchise, Insidious. It's still expertly made, but it's not quite the payoff the rest of the film deserved. The bottom line: The Conjuring was a fantastic character drama that also happened to feature remarkably tense haunted house movie moments and a riveting climactic exorcism. For the majority of its running time, The Conjuring 2 is more of the same, often a carbon copy in fact, but it eventually morphs into something a tad too generic. The last act lost me, but by that point I'd already jumped a couple of times and I'm not someone who normally jumps at horror movies. Bravo, Conjuring 2, you showed me some new tricks. Rotten Tomatoes consensus 75%. The Conjuring 2 can't help but lose a bit of its predecessor's chilly sting through familiarity, but what remains is still a superior ghost story told with spine-tingling skill. Review. 7 The Conjuring 2 is a proper old-school sequel. It doesn't retroactively turn The Conjuring into the first movement of a long-form narrative. It doesn't really mention the events of The Conjuring at all, outside of a couple quick visual allusions. It just takes the same heroes, married paranormal investigators Ed, Patrick Wilson, and Lorraine Warren, Vera Farmiga, and sets them loose on another adventure. It's a tactic that used to simply be the way sequels got done, and is somewhat out of fashion these days, but it has its advantages. One of those is that the film doesn't need to try so hard. It can just be a nice little self-contained object that's perfectly enjoyable on its own right, and hopefully it doesn't simply recreate the entire content of the first film over again. It's in no small part for this exact reason that Conjuring 2 proves to be such a damned good sequel. It is not, I think, as scary as The Conjuring, and it's certainly not as clean. The screenplay, by Carrie Hayes, Chad Hayes, James Wan, also the director, and David Johnson, is indulgent in exactly the ways that happen when a filmmaking team is given all the leeway in the world based on their last success, and so can afford to be undisciplined. But it might actually be better than its predecessor. At least, it tells a richer story that uses its characters to better effect. Also, the fact that word like story and character can be tossed around blithely in regards to a horror sequel about a poltergeist is by itself enough to demonstrate that there is something awfully special about these Conjuring pictures. They are full of the usual bump and jump nonsense of every ghost movie since time immemorial, but they have the audacity to anchor the typical gamut of haunted house cliché tilde copyright-esque and genuinely involving character drama, executed by legitimately talented actors. You wouldn't necessarily expect that from the start. When the film makes its most dubious choice, we reacquaint ourselves with the Warrens, many years after the end of The Conjuring, as they're investigating the alleged haunting that would catapult them to national prominence, right at the very start. In fact, there's a shot inside the attic room of a house with a distinctive gambrel roof, and extremely distinctive half-moon windows. Yes sir. We're in Amityville, New York, and Wan and Company have decided the best opening gesture for their film is to reiterate the stuff and nonsense of the Amityville horror, a story that has been subject to all the cinematic abuse it can withstand, I should have to think. The flip side is that it doesn't take much at all to be the best treatment of the material that we've seen. Lorraine, attempting to use her psychic powers to determine whether the claim that the house is possessed is bullshit or not, has a vision where she occupies the body of Ronnie DeFeo as he skulks through the house, murdering his parents and siblings with a shotgun. It's entirely unnecessary to put any of this in the film, but since it's here anyway, I'm glad it's so well done. The actual killings are done as violent jump cuts, with Farmiga staring helpless and horrified as she pantomimes cocking and firing the gun. The Amityville material does do one thing for the film, though it's probably the most troubling part of the whole production. Compared to the first Conjuring, the sequel is much more about the Warrens and their work, and there's a level on which the plot involves them working out their feelings about being prominent experts on ghost hunting and demonology in the face of a skeptical world. Put bluntly, it's hagiography, and the subjects upon which it lavishes praise are a pair of slimy con artists of the first order. The first movie never grapples so directly with the fact of the Warrens' career that it becomes an issue. The second movie foregrounds this, and puts in multiple scenes, the Amityville prologue among them, that are the next best thing to outright apologetics for the Warrens. Ah well, movies aren't journalism, they're movies, and The Conjuring 2 is a really damn good one. In Amityville, Lorraine has a terrifying vision of a demonic nun, Bonnie Aarons, who is all the stuff that Wan finds terrifying: old ladies dressed in black with craggy skin, predatory eyes, and the mouth like a vagina dentata. She also has a vision of Ed dying horribly. These are enough to put her off the ghost hunting game entirely, to Ed's confused acceptance. Meanwhile, in Enfield, in the north of London, a haunting is warming up. Peggy Hodgson, Frances O'Connor, a recent divorcee copyrightee with 4 children, is barely able to keep her family from imploding due to poverty and the shitty, ancient council housing they're obliged to live in. The stress is affecting all her kids, but it's mostly taking its toll on her younger daughter Janet, Madison Wolfe, who is starting to sleepwalk, or something. She keeps waking up at the foot of an old leather easy chair on the floor below the bedrooms, and who has half-seen visions of an angry old man, Bob Adrian. At first, this is all merely one more annoyance in a life of them, but pretty soon furniture is moving on its own, children are levitating, and Janet is speaking in the ragged voice of a male senior citizen. Peggy is encouraged to go to the media with her story, and in no time at all, the Hodgson family haunting has become a huge story, attracting attention from paranormal experts Maurice Gross, Simon McBurney, who sees here a chance to prove the existence of life after death, and Anita Gregory, Franco Potenti, who smells a hoax. The Catholic Church ends up getting involved, but before they're willing to intercede, they want some expertise of their own to check things out and verify that this isn't just a publicity stunt. Those experts, naturally, turn out to be the Warrens themselves. Over Lorraine's misgivings, they head over the week before Christmas, which turns out to be used exactly right to plug some ironic holiday iconography in without battering us over the head with it. The appeal of The Conjuring 2, much like the appeal of The Conjuring, lies in having the old tunes played well, not in seeing anything surprising or unexpected. But oh, golly, how well it's played. As a ghost story, it's marvelously well constructed to produce an increasing sense of distress and unease rather than to actually scare us, though Wan still knows how to place a jump scare particularly well, as the punctuation mark to a long stretched-out moment of nervous waiting. Still, one of the neatest tricks The Conjuring 2 plays is to give us an expanded view, not a contracted one, which makes such jump scares harder. Wan and cinematographer Don Burgess use an awful lot of long takes with the camera sliding back and forth, left and right, around corners and behind doors. It's almost invariably yoked to a character's perspective, but instead of leaving lots of hidey holes for demons to jump out of, it tends to emphasize contiguous spaces and big rooms. It makes emptiness more terrifying than things jumping out of the dark, and it works enormously well. One of the film's best moments comes when the youngest Hodgson child, Billy, Benjamin Hay, rolls a toy fire truck into the dark space of a tent he has set up in the hallway. We already know that a dark force is going to roll the truck back, since we've seen it happen, so Wan and Burgess frame the shot so that we see the end of the hall with the tent and Billy hiding around the corner simultaneously. The tension comes because we know exactly what's going to happen, and it's the uncomfortable duration of it not happening that's nerve-jangling. The whole movie is full of that. Gestures that use the fact that we know we're watching a horror movie as a tool against us. It's really quite wonderful. Still and all, while The Conjuring 2 is a solid ghost story, it's a great story about Ed and Lorraine Warren, the movie characters, at least, if not the real-life charlatans. It's a marital drama, secretly, and a story of people relying on faith. This is the most Catholic horror movie in ages, maybe even since The Exorcist, and as a non-Catholic that might leave me chilly, except the film takes such great care to make religion an irreducible part of the characters' identities and arcs. One does not walk into big summer movies anticipating a moving study of people who are very afraid, but force themselves to do good and be good, since goodness is key to the faith that helps them swallow back that fear. A thoughtful and nuanced take on belief for any movie. One doubly doesn't expect to see this in a film with a 2 in its title and ghosts blowing up light bulbs in its plot description. But it gives a lot for the actors to work with, and Farmiga, in particular, runs with it all the way to the end zone. I liked her a lot in The Conjuring already, and she's even better here, subtly exploring the doubts and fears and fortitude of her character in a way that would do any film proud, and is downright miraculous for a horror movie. In truth, the film commits a lot of unnecessary mistakes. It's clearly too long, for one thing, at a generous 134 minutes, 22 more than The Conjuring. Time not well spent on the Amityville material or the Warrens' appearance on TV chat show, and it takes entirely too much time for the Warrens to get to England, especially given that all the best character material takes place there. The Hodgsons aren't as distinct and appealing as the parents from the last film. Peggy is likable, but we don't learn much about her other than tired-out single mom, and Janet is mostly just the wide-eyed innocent victim. Meanwhile, while big sister Margaret, Lauren Esposito, and Billy get some material to flesh them out, brother Johnny, Patrick Macaulay, is a complete non-entity. And the dialogue suggests a bunch of Americans whose sense of the way English people talk and act is, let's be kind and say, unsophisticated. There's also yet another climax that's functionally identical to every other Wan-derived Fight the Demon movie, and they're starting to reach aerial battles over cities in Marvel films levels of right predictability. Still, there's way more to love than otherwise. The characters, The funhouse quality of the scares, the smart production design and costumes, which build a completely lived-in version of 1977 that never upstages the action, props, as well, to whoever hid foreshadowing detail about the demon into the sets for the Warrens' house. I saw the random letters, I thought they were odd, and then when it was revealed what they spelled out, it was an aha moment of the best, most shivery kind. It's a fine and empathetic human story that happens to be told in the horror genre, where such stories aren't typically told. That's really cool, and the fact that it's damn good horror movie on top of it just makes it so much the better.